Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Raw Men. Once again, we have Terri Hulm of the Cheyenne River Sioux, and we've interviewed her a couple of times before on issues with the DAPL, the Dakota Access Pipeline, and the whole issue with Standing Rock and all of that. But now she is the founder of something else called Cleaner Peace Coalition that is dealing with something just as egregious that is also going on reservation lands, and she would like people to know about it. And this sort of fits my protocol for the show. Joining her again is my friend Tracy Savage, who is a scientist and a news reporter in San Diego. Tracy, how do you do?
I do fine. I could do happier if we didn't have to talk about this stuff.
If we didn't have to talk about things like this, yes.
Yeah.
So Terri, I'm going to let you get started and tell me what's going on now.
Well, they've basically decided to try to kill us all. It feels like.
Way to come out with a 1-2 punch.
Water source. We've got one water source for the entire reservation. And they want to open up a uranium mine on the reservation. This company called Power Tech Inc. Wants to open up the uranium mine in Dewey County, which is on the reservation, and Burdock County, and it empties into the Cheyenne River, which and 3 aquifers, and that also goes back into the Missouri, which flows into the Mississippi. So we've got the 17 million people downstream affected by this also.
Only
then in the next county right off the reservation, the DOE has targeted it because we've got less than 1,000 people per square mile. So the lawsuit will be less for the cancer when it has to go class action, because they want to bury 3 miles deep highly radioactive, like nuclear fuel rods, plutonium triggers. They want to plant nuclear bomb MOX fuel when you're talking about the cesium in there, which will just stop your heart and give you a mysterious heart attack. So now we can't even go to groundwater if DAPL or the Keystone XL, which Friday are, great minds, so to speak, on the Public Utilities Commission, decided to allow the permit for. So now we've got to deal with Dakota Access Pipeline, Keystone XL, this Dewey Burdock uranium mine, and this crazy company that wants to bring nuclear waste here to store underground, since our, governor basically decided to betray everyone in western South Dakota, Governor Dugard, and write a letter to the DOE telling them that the western half of the state is open for nuclear waste storage.
Okay, I got a couple of questions about this just for the broader audience, and I want to open with a comment. You said that the DOE is tracking this for minimum casualties for what they expect for the overflow. The DOE, of course,
right.
The Department of Energy, which is now being headed by our former beloved Governor Rick Perry, who,
yes,
I have to mention, if I didn't mention the last time, the very first thing that he did upon being governor was to store toxic waste in an aquifer feeding 4 states. That's the first thing he did.
He was also sits on the board for Energy Transfer Partners, which is the originator of Kelsey Warren's multi-tentacled
Dakota Access.
But he also has his hands in a lot of other pies with other pipelines around the country. So Energy Transfer Partners is basically like a conglomeration with these other little sub companies, quote unquote, underneath them, and each one of these pipelines are sections of pipeline.
Yeah, so that's how they tried to get the permit. They said it wasn't that long, so they didn't need they don't need a complete environmental impact study, because if they got one, they'd never be able to have their pipeline. So they just said all these little pieces, but they're all connected together.
Let me just to make sure I understand. When they say it's, we don't need it because it's not that long, but they don't say how long that long is. It's only the Missouri and the Mississippi River.
Well, no. What they're saying is this little teeny section here that we ran,
Yes.
but you need to ignore the legality of the fact that it connects to this other section, and that it connects to this other section, and that it connects to this other section.
Okay,
Just
well, then,
overlook that and say it fits underneath this smaller
this
running
little
section.
tiny, they call it different things. There's different parts of the pipeline all over the United States and connected together like a bunch of, blocks. Like they just connected them together like Legos, like that.
well, let me see if I can, just so the audience understands, when we're talking about this reservation, I mean, I don't know what expanse of land people might have in their minds, but how big is the reservation in the affected area?
It's the size of Connecticut.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's just the not Standing Rock, but that's the Cheyenne
Yeah, that's
River.
just Cheyenne River.
And that's in South Dakota.
Okay.
It's in South Dakota. So we want these ranchers and farmers to realize that nobody's going to want to buy their products if it's got benzene contamination and radioactive
Can we cover
waste
why there would be
contamination.
benzene contamination?
Oh, if
what?
either one of these pipelines breaks, the Keystone XL,
Mm-hmm.
and they all break, they all leak. We're definitely wanting to boycott anything. You don't want to eat anything coming out of North Dakota. North Dakota, their biggest exports are beef and durum wheat. You want to ask your pizza places, your pasta places, any place that uses durum wheat, where they source it from, because North Dakota has over 300 leaks that they don't let the public know about. They've got over 300 leaks, and it's leaking benzene into the water, into the soil. It's coming up in the wheat. You don't want to eat any beef from there. It's all contaminated.
So
you definitely need to boycott anything coming out of there that you want to put in your body, because it will give you cancer.
This is a pretty hefty claim. Is there any kind of documentation, a link you can provide for me that I can?
Oh yeah, go on the World Health Organization. There's tons of documents and studies over the years of the toxicity of benzene. Benzene is a thinner.
What I mean is something to validate that there are 300 leaks, I guess, currently. Or recently?
There's several. We've got them on my page.
Yeah. I have a whole list of over 600. Actually, there's 6,000 spills, but the way that they describe it is there's 6,000. It's a little under 7,000 spills right now. Here's how you
7,000 spills. What, in the country right now that are ongoing right now?
Yes. And this is how you
of them are in North Dakota. And they don't notify the public, and that has been a proven study.
Here's the difference between a spill and a leak. It's the amount and what gets reported, period. And I talked for a long time with John Bolenbaugh, who's the Enbridge whistleblower, right? And he explained to me the amount that they allow to come through as a leak, because it doesn't even register, because they have a particular
pressure
mechanism, right? That only a certain amount gets out, and they don't do anything about it until it gets to a particular level of volume that has escaped, and then it sets off a quote unquote alarm. So you could have all this contamination from several leaks, and it wouldn't really matter, because each one of those is separate. They measure them separately. So that's why when you have people in, say, Montana this last year, that there's a guy or a lady out there walking her dog, and she comes across this crude that's all over the place, they literally had to declare a state of emergency in the whole state of Montana. Did you even hear about that in the news?
No.
Okay, it's a fact. And it was going on during about the time that the Dakota Access Pipeline water protectors were starting to gather and really try to get the information out there. So it was like a midsummer-ish, I would say. And this is a state of emergency, and they don't report it. This is not something that is going to be discussed on mainstream media, because they're told what to report, as we know.
And
we all contacted them.
In June of 2005, The USDA took coding off that lets you know what state your meat comes from.
Right.
They did away with that coding.
Because we don't need
So
regulations, and we don't need, we
yeah,
can just,
and
we can
because if
just
you're
allow the
eating
free market to,
a cancer hamburger or a cancer steak that comes from, North Dakota, land of pipeline spills galore, they don't want you to know about it.
Yeah, so this, in 1974, Congress passed the Safe Drinking Water Act, right? And this requires the EPA to determine safe levels of chemicals in drinking water, which do or may cause health problems, right? Now, these are non-enforceable levels solely based on like possible health risks and exposure, and they call that maximum contaminant level goals. Okay, the MCLG for benzene in particular has been set at 0 because the EPA believes that this level of protection would not cause any of the health effects described, in the literature and in the scientific studies. That means you can't have any in your water. They are using the water that's being the groundwater and the actual river and aquifer water to irrigate for agriculture and of course the animals that live there that you're going to end up eating in a steak dinner. Is they're going to be eating and drinking water from this source, and the agriculture that grows that they eat is coming from the same area. Okay,
Yeah,
so
hunters
it
and
gets
fishermen are
it get
at risk also.
yeah, and we're looking at the fact that just beef in particular, talking about beef. If you don't, if they're not required to tell you where your beef came from, you're not going to be able to boycott beef coming from a particular area that has been contaminated with oil spills. So they can sell it, and you would never know whether or not this beef was contaminated because you don't know where your beef came from.
I
I mean,
gotta
you could.
I gotta ask you these things because I know that people that make comments on any video that I upload, they tend not to believe anything. They tend to be very cynical. They say that everything is overblown or exaggerated, or it doesn't really
No.
mean that at all. So I mean, this is the kind of response that I usually get on these type of things. So this is why I'm
Okay.
asking. This is why I'm asking that whenever possible, let's get a, if you would please.
Okay, you want specifics? Okay,
Well,
based on this MC.
what I want is that when we've said like a couple of things, I said, can you get me a link for that? I just want to remind you that when that subject comes up, can you remember where you got your link from so you can,
Yeah,
so I can
I will actually send you a list of links. You want the links for the oil spills?
in this case, yes, to verify that there are however many oil spills or oil leaks that are currently going on, that there's verification of that, and also that people will say, and I've seen them say this, that it doesn't matter. That's only so much gasoline in an aquifer feeding 60,000 people or whatever. So even it
Okay,
can't really hurt somebody.
actually, that's not true. That's not true.
I
Because
know.
you have the MCL's been set at 5 parts per billion because the EPA believes, with the present technology and resources, that this is the lowest level that water systems can reasonably be required to remove the contaminant should it occur in drinking water. It's not just drinking water. This water is also used for agriculture, and you're going to eat that beef that drank that water or ate the plants that was watered by that water.
Understood.
It's all it's all related.
Yeah, all I'm saying is that for the people that start typing, well, it ain't all that bad. I just want to address that. Yeah, it is, and here's the documentation to prove it. It's not just what we say. Because
Okay,
and you need the links for the 300 plus spills in.
Yeah, I've got that. Now, when you're talking about short-term health effects, if people say it ain't that bad, okay, the EPA alone, and this is based on a myriad of studies, which they can all be looked up. They're under academia, the scholarly articles. When you look up adverse health effects of benzene exposure, it's been found to potentially cause in people, not just animals, because that's another argument. People say, well, it happens in cows, but does it happen in people? Well, let me tell you what happens when people are exposed to it. temporary nervous system disorders, immune system depression, and anemia. That's just the short term. So you wouldn't even know that you're sick in the beginning. Then the long-term effects, especially from a lifetime of exposure, because as you know, benzene just doesn't go away. It doesn't dissipate. It is, chromosome aberrations in cancer. There's various forms of cancer that are very popular. Leukemia is one that we see quite often with these fracking spills. And fracking is just another way of getting the oil out of the ground. There are drill methods, and then there's also the fracking method, and that's where they take salt water, which they call brine, and they locate down in the shale a deposit of oil, and it's mixed in with sometimes sand, depending on where they're getting it from, and they force down water like you're blowing water out of a straw into this hole, and then force that oil back up. So that's that, and they have to thin it out with these chemicals like benzene, for example, so that they can get it to move, because crude is like sludge. It's like peanut butter. It doesn't just flow like you turn on a faucet and it just pours, like what you put into your, a lot of people have a misnomer that it's just like the oil that you get and you put in your car. That is the furthest thing from the truth. Crude is like gunk. And if you've ever tried to stir up peanut butter that's separated, that's exactly what you're doing. So you're going to have to get a bunch of chemicals in there to help get it to move through those pipes. Now, the problem that happens with the pipes that spill, for people that don't know, is the pipes are not efficiently made for this particular type of transport. Not only are they getting corroded on the inside of the pipes because of the sand, they're also getting corroded because of all of these chemicals.
Okay, well, I want to share something with you. I mean, one of the comments that I've gotten from these people, the people in my comment section, was that that this doesn't really cause all this problem. That you can have a concentrated amount. You could even drink a shot of gasoline and it wouldn't hurt you. And as
no, that's a lie.
Well, of course,
yeah.
But I remember from personal experience that I had accidentally swallowed about a shot worth of gasoline when I foolishly tried to use a siphon tube once upon a time as a kid. So and I know what that did to me, and the effects of that were the whole day, right? I mean, it was, and I don't even want to go into the description of it, but it was bad. And so this person says, "Well, you're still alive, aren't you?" I managed to survive with deleterious effects, being poisoned. Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say that you can drink a shot of gasoline and it won't hurt you. That's clearly not the case. But this is the kind of things that people type in the comment section. This is why I want to be very careful about what we say and what we can.
Well, and some of these people are actually paid by these pipelines to go in
to argue.
Well, that may be true. I think the greater number of them are just being stupid.
Some of them.
Well, they're also trying to they're trying to have cognitive dissonance in the respect that they don't want, if they actually realize the horror of what's going on, they would have to do something. And most people are lazy. I'm sorry.
People don't want to have to change what they do. They don't want they don't want to be responsible for their actions very often.
You're going to need to go to your grocery store. You're going to need to ask, I want to know exactly where this meat is sourced from before I purchase it. You need to go to your restaurants and say, I want to know where this meat is purchased from is sourced from before what state it comes out of. I want to know. And you need to find this out before I'm going to spend any more money in your grocery store, before I'm going to spend any more money in your restaurant. You also need, pizza places need to tell you where they're getting their durum wheat from. Pasta places, you need to find these things out so that you're not giving yourself cancer or feeding your children cancer. Children are more highly susceptible to this because their cells divide quicker than the
Well, they're smaller. Their bodies are smaller. They can't take as much toxin as an adult body.
Well, also, having, worked in the nuclear industry, their cells divide faster. They are far more susceptible to radiation. And those radiation particles, if they're in the meat, if they're in the beef, they're going to be in your body. And they're not leaving. They don't go out through your normal, excretion processes. They remain in you and just build up and put out radiation and cause cancer.
Okay,
So you can look up there's a PDF, and it's at the World Health Organization .int/water_sanitation_health. You can look up benzene in drinking water World Health Organization, and you will get all of the statistics. And it's a huge PDF, many pages. Have a party, read it, and then come back and comment on the thread.
Okay,
These people are. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead, please.
Okay. Omaha Steaks. They use irradiation, and there's it's under food safety news. I mean, they flat out, Omaha Steaks uses benzene and toluene. It's there. It's in the irradiation process. So you have people that are actually already being poisoned right now, and you wonder why the incidence of these cancer clusters are in certain areas. Okay, well, you look at the Yellowstone River oil spill, and all the people along that route, there have been huge amounts of cancer clusters. John Bolenbaugh was discussing the Kalamazoo spill and how many kids literally have leukemia. And this is current. This is unusual to have that many people go from no leukemia, or maybe one case in every 3 or 4 years at the most, to, a dozen kids or 24 kids.
Yeah.
This is not a normal thing. And these are just the kids that are being detected. You don't know that there are other latent issues that are happening to the other children as well. It doesn't always manifest in leukemia. So that's just benzene. There are so many other chemicals involved in this brine that they use in this sludge thinning process that I don't think people are even aware of what any of these individual things do. But benzene itself, 2 drops in 40 gallons, is toxic. 2 drops. And
yeah,
when I say drops,
cola.
I mean,
that makes you 40 gallons of carcinogenic Coca-Cola, of carcinogenic,
and this is
soft drink.
Right. This is drops in pharmaceutical terms when I say drops.
Gotcha.
So teeny eye drops.
Yeah.
In 40 gallons of water.
It's a drop. It's a particular measurement. So it's just eye drop, like an eyedropper.
Gotcha.
In 40 gallons, and that is toxic to you, me, cows, birds, whatever. So the fact that we've got these oil spills happening right now currently, we are getting low information from any sort of sources on it. A lot of these oil spills aren't even cleaned up, and John Bolenbaugh has actual film of him going to a place that was written off by the EPA and by Enbridge and pulling back netting that had tufts of grass growing on top. And there's feet of crude just sitting underneath this. They just covered it up and walked away. He was told to do that. He was on the very last line of the approval process to say, yep, it's cleaned up. And when he talked to him about it, they gave him a hard time. And these guys get run off the job sometimes, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, they run them off. And these guys are gone. They're never seen again. And he tells all the stories. He's got all this stuff documented. He has had several other people that have come out as whistleblowers as well. They offered him millions of dollars to settle at a court, and he wouldn't do it. So if you go to his website, helpa.org, it's HELPPA.org. He's got his videos on there where he literally goes to these websites these spill sites, and he's like in the water with a shovel digging up crude, and it's coming up, and he's not even in up to his waist. He's like to his thighs, and that's it.
If possible, would you grab a link for that too and put it in the list of links to share with me when the video is done? We can put below.
Yeah, and I can call him, and you can have him on your show. He'll tell you everything. Well, he's fantastic.
That might be good, and I might do that. But
it's crazy, and we need to get these farmers and ranchers on board to realize that they're going to go bankrupt if they ruin the land and water these corporations that have these pipelines, these uranium mines, and want to store nuclear waste, make billions of dollars, they're going to bankrupt these ranchers and farmers because people don't want to eat cancer burgers or cancer steak.
Well, if they even get to bankruptcy, if they're not dead, a lot of these ranchers are in the frontline defense or the frontline areas of where this contamination is going to occur. Now,
yeah, and they're not aware of what's happening. I went to a meeting with that ResPec company that wants to do the borehole.
That's
and they're trying to make
RESPEC.
it sound like it's a purely scientific discovery they're looking for. They're just going to borehole this, and if you've had any kind of medical radiation, it's your responsibility to take on this radioactive waste for the rest of the country, because we need to put it someplace with less than 1,000 people per square mile, so when they sue us, it's less of a lawsuit.
Class action lawsuit,
less people involved. And
well, they figure they'll probably most of them will be dead before it gets to court anyway, right?
Yeah. Another thing,
and
I can imagine. Another thing,
demanding that the community accept nuclear waste before they'll give them their big $40 million grant to do this borehole exploration. And these people live in Rapid City. And when I asked them, why don't you do this near Rapid City? Well, it's a really big drill. Was all this supposedly educated engineer, Maggie on Scooby-Doo, could reply to me.
Okay, what they're doing is they're trying to shut it down with pseudo information. They're saying just enough so it sounds scientific, but at the same time they're not giving you any actual information to hold on to. So
they're making it sound like it's benign. It's cancer. They're making it sound like it's just some benign experiment, but you have to agree to accept nuclear waste after we do this. So if there's situations in this borehole to put this nuclear waste in, your community has to agree to accept the nuclear waste that is going to be coming.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on.
Put a target on western South Dakota for nuclear waste. He wrote a letter to the DOE opening up the entire western part of the state because it's mostly full of reservations and there's Indians here, and it's all, it's environmental racism.
Well, they target the community because nobody's going to stand up for them in the mainstream media, as we know. I mean, through the DAPL process. Also, the only reason why Keystone XL got any press at all is because famous people like Robert Redford got involved. Okay? There's only the only thing that we ever have are celebrities lending their name to things, but the average person that's looking stuff up on Google and they're deciding like, oh my God, this is carcinogenic. This is outrageous. It's going to possibly, contaminate drinking water for 20 million people. And the first people hit are going to be dead. They're not going to be able to complain about it because they won't be able to survive it, And if you take away their Affordable Care Act, guess what? Who's going to be able to afford cancer treatments at that point?
Yeah. Now there are some people.
When you ask these people hard questions, they tell you that you should be more polite. Now, how polite are you supposed to be to somebody who's trying to kill your entire tribe, give all your children cancer? I don't know how polite you're supposed to be because, actually, I think that we should have just, to the ground and told them to take their stuff and leave. That's my opinion.
Yeah, there are people that are going to be
and then they'll tell you that you're supposed to trust your politicians.
Yeah.
When our politicians took off a referendum voted on by the people of the state of South Dakota to have oversight. And now they've got a watered down oversight they're trying to present us with, so they can still accept these bribes from these companies that make billions of dollars to basically start giving everyone in the area cancer.
So you were gonna address the politicians' point Aaron?
Well, no, I was going to say that there are people that are, that are typing responses into the video right now that are going to say, well, all this happened under Obama. You can't blame Trump for this.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Okay, wait a second. If you strip down the EPA and you take science standards out, which is what Pruitt just said this last week, okay?
Mhm.
He wants to take standard science equivalencies out of the EPA standards, okay? That means you can just do whatever you want. And basically, you're in the game BioShock, where people just do what they do. They don't have any codes. They don't have to have things inspected. They just take what they need, and the common person is at the mercy of, hopefully having enough, a strong enough genetic, constitution, right, to be able to make it. Now, I want to talk about for just a second. She jumped from the oil spills, right? Okay, the benzene issue, which we're talking about specifically, but there are a lot of other chemicals that are involved also. And what I'm going to do is I'm also going to get the other chemicals that are used in these thinning processes, and I'm going to share that scientific information with you. The thing that she referred to, RESPEC, RESPEC, that's a group that is
out of Rapid.
Yes, that is Rapid City, that is taking bids on who's going to be doing this uranium mine in particular. No, I mean the borehole.
The borehole.
Okay, let me explain that real quick. Just real quick.
I would like to address the Trump issue.
Okay, well, wait. The borehole, for people that don't understand, there's three things we're talking about here. We're talking about the contamination from the oil spills and that getting into the food, and you not being allowed to really know where your food comes from. Therefore, you won't know if you're getting tainted meat or not. The second thing is we're talking about a uranium mine that's being proposed to be built right on the reservation that is on Cheyenne River, which will contaminate that river, that water supply also. And there's also quite a bit about uranium levels and aquifers that were measured very distinctly. In 2015, there was a gigantic report about that, which we can talk about in just a minute. The third issue that we're talking about is a borehole, which is literally a 3-mile long, deep hole that they're going to stick nuclear waste in. Some of that nuclear waste is going to be spent rods. They want a cooling pool down there to put these things in. They need water with which to do it. You have to have water to be able to cool off the rods. I just did a big show on nuclear disasters, and the reason why the meltdown had occurred was because in, say, Fukushima, was because when the tsunami hit, all the rocks and stuff knocked out the generators, which continued to pump the water, and that's the reason why it overheated. And they couldn't get in to stop it because all of the doors and the panels to get in, they literally were using car batteries to try to open them because they couldn't even get into the facility to turn things off or to turn things on manually. So this, what is happening here, you look at Fukushima and all the radioactive bores running around. I wrote an academic article about the radioactive bores from Chernobyl that are running all over Eastern Europe right now. They're everywhere, and they're radioactive. They are absolutely measurable because they root around in the ground, and they're going to be one of the first, line of the food web that's going to be hit. That's mammalian. Okay, so you have that exact thing now happening, and these stories are actually being printed by Huffington Post and by New York Times about these radioactive animals that are in Fukushima. Now, where do we put spent rods? Where are we going to put them? Well, they're going to find an area that's not densely populated, that, like she said, has less than 1,000 people, so they can keep the costs down if they get a class action lawsuit. And so what's happening here is literally they're just digging a hole like a dog with putting a bone in a hole. That's what is happening. And they don't want to release all the information about how toxic this is.
Well, there's no monitoring down at that level. They just bury it and leave. They don't even stay there to monitor it. If it gets stuck, it's going to go into meltdown. while they're trying to put it down the borehole. Also,
Right,
getting back
and they want
to
it straight
President
down.
Trump, he is directly responsible for writing a presidential memorandum allowing Keystone XL and pushing through Dakota Access Pipeline because he's invested in them. It's to make himself richer, which he should be impeached for.
Yeah, the next comment is going to be that he.
It's not Trump's fault. These two pipelines are directly Trump's fault.
Well, the comment now.
His fault.
The comment now is that there's some publication somewhere that there was some announcement that Trump had sold off all his interests.
No, and I found that information and I posted it to you. He did not sell off his interests. He actually reinvested it in the other company that ended up also subsidizing the Sunoco ETP / DAPL.
Yeah, he bought stock in another company that owns DAPL.
He just changed it.
It was just a smoke and mirror thing to try and make it look like he isn't invested. He reinvested, and now he is totally invested in both pipelines.
And what I remember
is be impeached.
What I remember from the documentation from one of these companies were that they stated that he had invested minimum of $500,000. It was something like $500,000 at least.
At least, yeah. Well, okay, you want to talk about the borehole drilling project, okay, specifically. The reason, there's a Western Kilo Land, which is the name of the area that she's discussing. Okay, this project is funded by the U.S. Department of Energy, so this is the government, to find out whether it's possible to store nuclear waste inside deep holes drilled in Haken County. Okay, now I want you to go, or Haken, I'm sorry, County. You go back into that statement. They're trying to find out whether it is possible to store nuclear waste inside deep holes drilled there in Haken County. This is an experiment.
It was tested in Europe and it failed. It's also failed in this country. This is a failed technology. They already know leaks.
Yeah, it was already introduced. Go ahead. Sorry.
It already failed in Europe. It's outlawed in Europe. It's not allowed to be used, but yet this company, you know, they're going to make millions, so they're going to try to bury it here.
So my next question is you're saying that this uranium mine, I don't know where the borehole is, but you said that the uranium mine that they're talking about is actually on reservation land?
It's in Dewey. It's in Dewey and Bergen. It's in Dewey and Burdock County. Dewey County is on the reservation.
Okay.
That's where my grandparents had a farm. It's in Dewey County and Burdock County. That's what the uranium mine is. It's a large strip mine, so it encompasses 2 counties.
All right. So we had with the NoDAPL standoff, the Standing Rock thing, we had people saying that it wasn't reservation land, and of course the indigenous are saying yes, this is our land. But is the same kind of dispute going on over this land?
Part of it. Okay, the Dewey County land, reservation land. Burdock County is
not like there's no contest about that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
so we don't have companies.
It's not within the border of the reservation. However, this is unceded treaty territory. We own this land. The government stole it, just like they stole the Black Hills. And there's a lawsuit. We own the Black Hills. That's what's proven in the Supreme Court. But they just wanted to give us the money, not give us the land back. So the money's sitting in an account because the Great Sioux Nation has refused to take the money. We want the land back. Same thing in Burdock County. Same thing with the DAPL. We own that land. Actually, that Army Corps land was supposed to be returned in the year 2000, as per the agreement for that Pick Sloan damming of Lake Oahe. But it wasn't returned.
Okay, so the damming of Lake Oahe, for those who don't know.
So legally, we own all this land. We own it, and we own the mineral rights, and we own the water rights. But these corporations are trying to put out this story that we don't. But legally, we do.
Okay, so
And
they're doing.
there are multiple lawsuits right now, and there's going to be more lawsuits,
All right,
to
so-
decide this.
So what I'm getting then is that the land that this uranium mine is going to go on is on land that the Sioux unambiguously declare as theirs, but that apparently some
Well,
other
no,
company. No.
No, they outright
The
declare
part of
that.
the mine that's in Dewey County
Mm-hmm.
is on the reservation, within the border of the reservation.
Okay, so there's nobody saying there's
There's no
nobody
question.
saying that they paid for it or that it was ceded. There's no contest over that.
Well, no. Within our reservation, we have deeded land,
Right? Mm-hmm.
which white people can buy, and we have Indian trust land, which you can only sell to another enrolled tribal member.
Okay.
So the uranium mine, part of it is on reservation land.
Okay, so let me
Part of
ask
it
you
is
then.
on unceded treaty land.
Okay, so
So it's in both.
let me ask you about the borehole, the 3 mile deep.
The borehole is in Hacken County. I live in Ziebach County. It's the county right to the east of us. It's
Right.
in Hacken County,
Uh-huh.
and that is unceded treaty land.
So
Right.
the
So
borehole would be in reservation land.
No,
No.
the borehole is directly off the current boundary of the reservation that the government set up after they acquired the land. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Now that land is by treaty, which this country doesn't have the ethics to honor their treaties, would be owned by the Cheyenne River Sioux Indian Reservation, because that's part of the Great Sioux Nation. But it's now outside of the reservation currently, and those boundaries will be decided by the
And do
Supreme
you-
Court, and they will probably try to give us money again instead of returning the land. Because if they return the land, all of the non-enrolled owners of that land are out, or would have to be paid off by the government.
They'd have to
That's
move.
the thing.
And
Pay off the people in the Black Hills, pay them with that money, and give us back the land.
So about being adjacent to the land or being like right on the border of the land, it seems you mentioned that there's something about that there was an act of racism that was going on here with setting up these things like right on reservation.
Well, do you think that the radiation is going to stop at the border?
I'm not arguing with you. I'm saying
No. I mean, I'm just posing that question. It's radiation is going to be. It doesn't really care whether if it's butt up against it, and they don't even know literally what's going to happen if they bury this crap.
Well, let me tell you where I was going with that. Where because a lot of people know about what the water in Flint, Michigan, but almost nobody knows about the water on the Navajo Nation.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's uranium. Go ahead. They have a uranium mine there too.
Have one water source, and they're trying to pollute it with a uranium mine and 2 pipelines. Okay, and then if that happened, which all pipelines leak, all uranium mines put out tailing piles that leak, and leak, the water will be contaminated if either 3 of these happen. Okay, DAPL, Keystone XL, or this uranium mine. Our water source is poison, not drinkable, not bathable, and then we would have to use groundwater. Well, now the groundwater is going to be radioactive due to the borehole. So now we have no water. That's what we're going to be left with.
Okay.
And if that's not continued genocide, I don't know what is.
It certainly looks that way, doesn't it? And it's a great deal of corruption and greed.
Yeah, it is. It's all over money. And people don't even understand that most of this is Chinese money.
Yeah.
The oil is going to China.
That was another thing that often comes up with these things is that people want to type into my comment section, well, how are we going to get the oil? Because pipelines are so much safer and this will create so many jobs. And they don't understand that this is
That is a complete myth put out by the oil industry because it's more expensive to pay truck drivers and trucks.
Yeah.
It's just cheaper for the corporations. That's all it is. It's not safer.
So actually building the pipeline actually reduces the number of jobs.
Yes,
Yes.
it reduces.
Industry.
Yeah,
And
because
then
truck
and
driving and train.
Yeah, and
Right.
it's not going to lower our gas prices either because this oil is not going to Americans. It's going to the Chinese.
No. Right.
Yes.
Yeah, but here's another argument. Do you like driving your cars? Do you like having laptops made from petroleum products because of the plastic? Well, if you don't like that, then fine. You go live out in the middle of nowhere with no electricity. What was it that guy said to you, Terry?
Oh, that idiot. He said that, then you don't deserve electric, water, or fiber optic pipeline. Yeah. None of those leak into the water. That's the mentality of some of these knuckle draggers. I don't know, man. It's crazy. Okay,
well, about this Respect, this Rapid City-based company. Okay, here's what's going to happen. You can tell me your projection after I get done, like sort of explaining this. Okay, this process involves drilling this hole about 3 miles down into the ground, and it's straight enough to put the canisters into to store the nuclear waste. Okay, we don't have a really clear, viable solution to storing nuclear waste and disposing of it. We keep creating it, but we don't know where to put it. Okay, so we put it in places where there's not very many people, or that, like out in the desert, or what was it, in the ocean, and that's turning out to be a bit of a problem. So right now, supposedly, Respect only wants to do research in this county to see whether the area is even suitable to support the boreholes. Okay, they don't even know what geological issues they're going to come across as they're going down in there. Now, there on 11/14/2016, there was a small borehole that was being proposed in one spot. Okay, what they're going to tell you is that this is just research and that they're not going to have any nuclear waste there yet. And right now, Respect is currently competing with 3 other companies in the United States to find out who's going to get to drill the first borehole. Okay, the project is going to have about 5 phases, and 4 companies were selected for phase 1 and 2. And after phase 1 and 2, the Department of Energy will down select, or they'll go from the 4 competing companies into one, like whoever did the best job or whatever. And so the phase 1 lasts about 5 months, and it consists of public outreach and information on within that county. And there's a rancher that was quoted as saying he knows that there's no nuclear waste will be involved during the research, and he believes it could lead to storage in the future. Now, why would they build a hole and just leave it sitting there, right?
Well,
so
the caveat is that the community has to agree to accept nuclear waste in order for the experimental hole to be drilled. Now, that means the community has to sign on with DOE that if they find the right conditions, then they can come in and store nuclear waste in that county.
Okay, here's how they propose this to the people. Okay, there's things that could go wrong with the drilling of the hole and bringing in the people and trucks, and this is during harvest time. They're planting or haying, okay? And there's kids around, and it's a ranch family, whatever. And if you remember, Arn, when we were driving down that goat trail, how fast those trucks were coming? Do you really think that these people are going to care when they're running in there to get this stuff done?
Yeah, they were cooking.
Yeah. So yet the community could benefit, quote unquote. This is how they pay them off financially. They're saying at the local level anywhere from $3.5 to $6 million of benefit is what they're saying. Of course, that is also up for dispute as well. And it's short termed, but I don't really. I think if you get paid off a couple $1 million, but you're dead, how are you going to spend it, right?
Well,
so
it is educating the kids. They're going to come educate the kids. They're going to give cancer to.
Right, and so what they're going to do? Build a park you know, so they can go swing on the swings next to the
an engineering class that the local kids in the county can go to so they can learn exactly how they all got leukemia.
Right. So, and the name of her governor there in South Dakota is Dennis Daugaard. Is that how you say it? Okay.
Daugaard.
And he's been supportive of the quote unquote research. And this is the first time anything like this has been done in South Dakota. And that there would only be a storage or disposal after a public vote in South Dakota. Now, if you have enough people that are thinking like, oh, well, there's no problem, you know, people are becoming a little bit more educated than they were, say, even just 5 years ago about, because they're looking at Fukushima and they're looking at the long range effects of Chernobyl, right? So you know that, go ahead.
That vote is overridden, Tracy. That vote is overridden by Hacken County agreeing to accept
exactly. Exactly. They rewrote. So this is what I'm trying to say, is the narrative that they put out there is that, well, everybody's going to agree or we just won't do it. And then she's letting you know that's not true. They just passed the referendum that they can override this vote.
Well,
they want it to go through.
DOE has to get permission. The Department of Energy has to get permission from the citizens of that particular county that they will accept nuclear waste before they can even do the experimental borehole. So that overrides, you've already given permission to the Department of Energy before they even take a vote. So your vote is overridden because you've already set the precedence of agreeing to accept the nuclear waste. So whether the state wants it or not, if these people in Hacken County want to get their $6 million in benefit, which is not guaranteed either, okay? They're telling them that they're going to have a 15% differential, which allows local contractors, which there aren't any, this is just a farming community, to come in and do some of the work on this. But there's nobody in that community technologically advanced enough to do anything but pick up trash and provide porta potties, okay? That those contractors will get that money. So that isn't even $6 million. You're talking, that county isn't going to get the $6 million they think they're going to get. That county is going to get maybe, you know, a few $1,000s to have trash taken from the site and have porta potties delivered. And that's it, because they don't have the kind of people that they need to do this living in that county. But this is just a carrot on a stick, and it's a lie.
Okay.
There'll be contractors from Rapid City. There'll be contractors from Denver. There'll be out-of-state contractors. These are not going to, you know, these people think, oh, this is going to bring jobs. Are you an engineer? Are you capable of running a borehole machine? Oh, yeah, and there's going to be one rent-a-cop out there at night doing security. So you're going to give one guy in the community a job and with a flashlight and a badge, and then the trash guy and the porta potty guy, and that's it. But they're presenting it as $6 million, and that is not the case either.
So you have a several headed monster going on here. We're still fighting about the DAPL. It's still going under a water source, and it will leak, and people will get poisoned. You still have a fight with the Keystone XL, which is, you know, a little under 2,000-mile pipeline also, and it's exactly the same issues that we're dealing with Keystone or with the DAPL, except DAPL actually hooks into other pipelines that are called other things along the route, okay? This Keystone XL is another pipeline that's coming all the way from Canada down through the tar sands, et cetera, and that's also passing through this area. Then we have at the water, there's something that Terri talked about, and I had posted quite a few. I'm going to write that on my list too. The gold mine that was upstream of the Cheyenne River, and it was knowingly dumping tailings and pollution into the water from the gold mine, which you probably know is arsenic, etc. Okay, that was already, it already polluted the water, but they didn't tell anybody until they found out after the mine was already bankrupt. So you have already contamination and illnesses that have happened, and cluster cancers, etc., that occurred from that. Now you've got two pipelines right in the same area, and you also have, they want to put a uranium mine in there. And now down to the west, you've got boreholes they're going to want to put 3 miles down and
down to the east.
Or I mean to the east of the Cheyenne River tribal boundary right there, just right on the other side, so that they're going to be burying these nuclear, potentially burying these nuclear canisters of waste and spent rod.
Nuclear canisters.
So not only do you have one, you have the most vocal tribe, even though everybody was going with the Standing Rock because that's where it was up there at that fight. Cheyenne River Sioux tribe has always been extremely vocal, and they've stood their ground, even with the Battle of the Black Hills. And they said no, they're not going to cave.
So I got another question.
They've stood strong. Go ahead.
All right. The motto of this show, as I often repeat, is that anybody can complain and everyone does, and it's not difficult to shoot down any solution that somebody comes up with. But I want to talk to the people who are actually doing something to make a positive difference. And
right.
I want to now know. We've only got a few minutes left of the show. I want to know, what is it that you guys are offering to do, or suggesting to do, or trying to mobilize, or what is the solution, and how do we address it?
Well, this coalition, the solution is to wake these ranchers and farmers up and make them realize that nobody's going to want to buy their product.
That's just that's one level to try to get them involved, because mostly this has been an Indian problem, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
They realize that their livelihood is at stake here, and that they need to make these legislatures stop, our local state government stop this, and they need to turn off the oil in all these pipelines so that they can continue to be a viable industry. If not, then people need to quit. People need to boycott their products. They need to not eat it because it's tainted and it will give them cancer.
The way you describe this, it is
this large voting bloc that controls, ranchers control the government in North and South Dakota.
So this is a huge voting demographic that is actually pushing forward, because they're being sold a line of bull.
Yeah.
They don't understand that they're literally going to lose product.
We need to realize that this hurts their income. This is going to bankrupt them if these things are put through. I'm also looking into water catchment from rain out at my place, because I was going to drill a well, but they want to put radioactive nuclear waste down in the water.
So that's not going to work. Okay. Then another thing is to stop the uranium mine. Now, specifically, mining and milling of uranium. There's so many radiation hazards that we now know about because of the radioactive waste that is in the form of what they call tailings. Has uranium, radium, polonium, and it's unavoidable. And it hits the environment in contamination forms of solid, liquid, and gas waste. When you inhale radon gas, it increases lung cancers, and underground uranium miners in the 40s and the 50s know very well how toxic radon gas is. And you probably know this too. And there's no argument about that. The uranium mill tailings when they were milling it, were released with impunity into water sources during the 40s and the 50s. And the radium launched from those tailings contaminated thousands of miles of the Colorado River system between about 66 and 71 or 72. In the Colorado Plateau region were found to contain anomalously high concentrations of radon. And after they built things on top of where the uranium tailings had taken from underneath. So they've got all these tailings underneath, and they're just building on top of it. And so these people are getting sick. It's leaching through the ground.
What a tailings pile is if you've ever seen a mine, there's this large pile of rock and gravel outside. And that's the tailings pile. And when it gets milled, it gets smaller, and now it's sand. So the sand in the bottom of those rivers is radioactive because it has uranium in it.
Mm-hmm.
Those rock piles and that gravel pile that's sitting there in the water has uranium in it. And then little pieces of it break off as the water breaks it down. And then you've got particles in the water, and you never get rid of them.
And the radioactive half-life of uranium is 4.5 million years. So you can do the math with that. So when people know enough in the world globally, the United Nations Environment Program study specifically talked about corroding penetrators, munition tips, groundwater contamination. All of this is uniquely laid out in specified form from them in reports. If we have a government from the highest office of our federal government that is trying to disassociate with the UN is not just a bunch of people sitting around talking about who's going to start war with who or who's not going to. They deal with environmental issues. They deal with protected sites all over the world. They deal with human rights violations. There are a myriad of different avenues that the UN deals with all over the world. And they're saying this. We, as a people, have got the right to stand up, right to our representatives. If these people are on the take, and they're voting against the best interest of the people, for example, overriding the public opinion about whether or not these boreholes should go in, that needs to end. This person needs to be recalled. Look, I live in California. Guess what we did to our governor a few years ago? Goodbye, Gray Davis. You know, you can do it. You can kick your governor out of office. These are going to take grassroots people getting up, standing up for where they live, being informed, and most of what we have to do is educate people and knock all of that brainwashing off that the government would never do this to you, because they are, and they have been.
They currently are. They've committed, this is continued genocide. They are honestly trying to kill us off.
So the coalition, the basic mission of this coalition is to create a model for other people to be able to start a resistance group in their own communities, to be aware of what's going on in their environment, and not allow this corporatocracy to take over and co-opt our healthy living environment, because they want to make a buck and they don't care about the masses. We should have a voice in our government. So the coalition is a multi-leveled fight. We have to educate, we have to mobilize, we have to organize, and we have to call for action on every one of these fronts. And it's going to take all of us getting together and saying we're not going to take this crap anymore.
Yeah, and we brought up the last time we talked, we brought up how you could have replaced your governor if we just could have gotten people out to vote. And this is something that I complain about all the time, that all the people that come up with excuses for why they're not voting, and what a drastic mistake that has proven to be.
Yeah, because the people who do go to vote are the people who elect people like Trump.
How we get up with Nazis in the White House is because people don't vote.
Well, now he's not technically a Nazi. He's
just surrounded by them.
Yeah.
Steve Bannon is a Nazi. He's a neo-Nazi.
No. Steve Bannon is not a Nazi. He is arguably worse. He's a self-described Leninist.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's right. I forgot. Oh, that's the opposite.
Now
Right.
get this, because we couldn't elect Bernie Sanders because he described himself as a democratic socialist, which in American language means he's a communist, right? Because we don't know the difference, right? So everybody says he's a communist. But what is a Leninist if not a communist, right? So it's okay to have a Leninist, and his goal is to burn down the government. This is in his own words.
Yep.
Somehow getting a Leninist who wants to burn down the government is preferable to somebody who wants to make sure that you have health care and an education.
Yeah.
You know, Arna, I'm gonna bring something up here that you and I have dealt with quite a bit, and I know that Terry knows about this too. Is the wedge strategy. The wedge strategy was implemented to be able to insert particular terminology and ideology into the science classroom originally. And science is for the science classroom. There's a particular set of standards, and then there's religious ideology or whatever idea that you have that's not actually provable by scientific standards. It's conjecture, basically. It can be your belief system, but it's belief. It's not evidence. And the evidence is where you come and you learn about that particular school of thought from scientific theory, okay? And the scientific method. So that's where the wedge strategy started. They had a 5-year originally a plan on how they were going to attack the science and get creationism into the schools, into the evolution classroom or the evolution curriculum. And what that was they're going to change the way that we have terms, and they would redefine them in social circles. They would attack through the media. They would attack through political, and what I think Chomsky refers to as cultural managers, which is like priests, teachers, people of authority that instruct. Okay, and that's kind of hard because you have to win that group over to be able to get them to motivate the people, the 80% down below. And mostly the 80% down below do what they're told because they've been indoctrinated with whatever, environmental input they've got. If they go to this particular school of thought or that particular school of thought, they're just going to follow it because that's what they think that they're supposed to do. The problem is that it didn't just stay there. This mentality has expanded. And when you hear the term alternative facts, okay, this is part of the thinking of the wedge strategy. It didn't just stay in that argument. It's moved out. For example, hearing that Africans that were brought over in the slave trade are just immigrants. And I guess slavery is just an employment option. Do you see what I'm saying? They're changing the way things are being said. We know the difference between a scientific theory and a theory, like a vernacular.
Yeah, one of our textbooks was sued over the fact that they changed the word slaves to workers in our social studies textbook.
So you are now seeing, if you stay awake, and part of what the coalition is going to have to do is literally educate people about the proper terminology about a lot of this stuff. If they minimize something that's a highly impactful thing, for example, when they said, well, it's just unceded land, and they're not doing anything, there's nobody living on it. What's happened is there's a fight over whether or not that land belongs to someone. And because the Army Corps of Engineers was messing with the whole Oahe Reservoir and the waterways, people automatically said in those arguments that, well, if the native leaders wanted to say something, why didn't they go and they tell them that the boundary was right there? Why didn't they just take their land? I mean, it's got to belong to somebody. It's obviously it belongs to the government. or belongs to these ranchers.
With our army, we're allowed to have. With our nuclear weapons, we're allowed to have here. We'll just take it over. It's brilliant.
Yeah. So let's make a final note.
So you understand where we're coming from,
I do,
right?
yes.
That we have to re-educate everybody from the ground up.
Yeah.
And we have to re-educate them in a manner people can understand. You've got to break it down in a manner they can understand, because all these scientific terms, they just turn off. It has to be broken down in a manner anyone with a,
like a high school education. Right.
Yeah, can understand. Because when you start using all these high-tech scientific terms, people will nod their head, but they don't understand what's being said.
Gotcha.
Right, like your person who said benzene can't be that bad. A little gasoline isn't going to kill you.
Yep.
I'll just drink it.
All right. Well, Tracy, Terri, once again, I thank you for having me on, or having come on to the show to explain your ongoing dilemma, which is so amazingly frustrating. And it's also frustrating that it does seem to be that being not white means it's not news. It does look like that sometimes. As I said,
Well,
when you barely hear, when there's no action on the Flint water situation, and the Navajo water situation is actually worse, and virtually nobody knows about that. That didn't make
for years.
But it's always, as a number of people have pointed out here recently, that whenever these sorts of things happens, it's always in a non-white neighborhood. And
do you know what the government sent the Navajos to water their crops and their stock with?
No,
I don't.
Used fracking water.
Yep.
They had it tested.
Yeah.
It was used fracking water.
It's used fracking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you put
repurposed water? Yeah, I will. Hold on, number 9. You know what, Aaron, I actually did shows on fracking. I did show a 2-hour interview with John Bolenbaugh, and I did a show on going nuclear. Okay, the nuclear power plant issue with basically Fukushima. Okay, those 3 things, I have got all the resources that you could ever possibly want, and I will send them all to you. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much, and I'll make sure to include them below. Is there anything else need be said before we stop this show?
We've got a group on Facebook for the cleaner peace. We would really appreciate it if people would join and give us some support. We're reaching out to mainstream media. We've made some networks. We've made some contacts. We're trying to get this word out there, and basically what we need are people.
And I'm guessing
and we're going to be releasing, there's going to be a press release through AP this weekend also.
Associated Press this weekend. And
so I'm guessing that the primary support that you're looking for is sharing through social media and getting up a public.
And yes, and we want to get the number. We want to get, the numbers of people so we can educate and so they can support us and help us stop this genocide that's ongoing. They want to help us. The best thing they can do is just get involved. And it only takes a couple seconds to like a Facebook page and share it to other people so that they can get educated too. So that, we can stop poisoning the entire country.
Right. We're just trying to save, the earth. That's all. Yeah. Just the people and the earth and the animals and the air. That's all. That's all. Just a little checklist we got going.
All right. Well,
go to the, they could just go into that Facebook group and join. We would love to have you, and we'll give you the current information on what we're doing. And, if you would just please give us some support, we would really appreciate it, because we really need it.
Terri, by the way, called Kiloland. Wasn't it, which station was that last night?
It's Keloland. It's station 11.
Oh, Keloland. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I called
They gave her 5 minutes.
No, they did a 5-minute. They were doing a 5-minute story already.
Right. Oh, they were. I'm sorry.
Yeah, they had a story already ready to go. It was lukewarm, in my opinion. But they had a story. We're trying to get the word out, but again, people just don't understand it. So it
Well, and
impacts.
I'm
But
gonna
it does.
say I'm gonna say something specifically about even local media. They already controlled. Goldman Sachs already controlled Lee Enterprises, which owns the Bismarck Tribune. These people have been looking. This has been in motion for some time. They know how to do this, to go through a community, make sure they've got the news on board, that they've got the ranchers on board, that they've already been talking to them, and they've already got everything figured out, where we're like, hey, wait a minute, what's going on here? And we're sort of doing catch up. And why isn't the media getting these stories out there? And I'll tell you the reason why is because most of them, they have that narrative. They're corporate owned. So
But
what we have to depend on is social media.
all the communities that have had nuclear powerhouses or Hanford nuclear storage site, nobody gets involved until pretty much everybody's got cancer. This time we'd like to do it ahead of time. And how about we just skip the cancer? Because I've already had it once. I don't want to get it again. And we just don't allow them to do this.
Yeah, preventative.
And an ounce of prevention is worth, in this case, 1 million pounds of cure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Terri Hulm, Tracy Savage, they implore you, share this video everywhere. Share their, or not, if not this video, then check the links down below and share those things everywhere. Specific references will be included. And thank you guys for being on. I'm going to go ahead and close it down unless you got something else to say other than goodbye.
No, and also helpit.org, HELPPA.org is John Bolenbaugh's site, and I really would love for people who say that this stuff gets cleaned up to go watch his video, because it doesn't. And he goes to several different sites of major oil spills.
Very good.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, Aaron, for having us on. We really appreciate it. And
yeah, thank you, Aaron.
We can get.
All right. Thank you both, and good night.
Good night.